The air conditioning hummed softly in the private hospital room at St. Nicholas Hospital, Victoria Island, but Amara Okafor couldn't stop sweating. Her hands trembled as she lay on the examination table, the cold gel spreading across her 7-month pregnant belly. Beside her stood her husband, Chinedu, his jaw tight with anticipation. Behind him, his mother, Mama Chinedu, hovered like a storm cloud about to burst. "Let's see what we have here," Dr. Adeyemi said cheerfully, moving the ultrasound wand across Amara's abdomen. The rhythmic whooshing of the baby's heartbeat filled the room. Amara closed her eyes and prayed silently. "Please, God, please let it be a boy. Just this once." For 8 years of marriage, she had endured the whispers, the side glances, the concern from well-meaning relatives. Her first daughter, Ada, now 8 years old, had been received with polite smiles and forced congratulations. When Zainab came 3 years later, another girl, the smiles had disappeared entirely, replaced by Mama Chinedu's barely concealed disappointment. 2 girls, Amara? 2! Her mother-in-law had said at Zainab's naming ceremony, loud enough for guests to hear. What kind of woman produces only girls? In our family, we need strong boys, sons to carry the Okafor name. Now, pregnant with her 3rd child, Amara had become a walking prayer. Every family gathering was torture. Uncle Emeka, Chinedu's younger brother, would joke about his own 2 sons while pointedly avoiding mentioning her daughters. Auntie Ifioma, Chinedu's sister, had started calling her the girl machine behind her back, though not quietly enough. "Ah, there we go." Dr. Adeyemi smiled at the screen. "Baby is healthy. Strong heartbeat. Good size for gestational age." "What is it?" Mama Chinedu pushed forward, her expensive gold jewelry clinking. "Boy or girl? Tell us." Dr. Adeyemi glanced at Amara, who nodded weakly. "It's a girl, a healthy baby girl." The room went silent, the kind of silence that precedes an earthquake. Amara felt her heart shatter. She looked at Chinedu, searching his face for any sign of support, of love, of acceptance. Instead, his jaw clenched, his eyes hardened, and he turned away from her, unable to even meet her gaze. "Another girl?" Mama Chinedu's voice exploded through the room, making the nurse jump. 3 girls? 3 girls? What kind of cursed woman are you?" "Ma, please." Dr. Adeyemi tried to intervene. "Don't, Mommy." The older woman's face contorted with rage. "My son has wasted 8 years on this failure. 3 chances, and not one son? Not one." Amara's tears started flowing, hot and silent. Her hands instinctively moved to protect her belly, to shield her unborn daughter from the hatred already being directed at her. "Mama, please," Amara whispered. "The baby is healthy. That's what matters." "Healthy? Healthy." Mama Chinedu laughed bitterly. "What good is healthy if you can't produce a male heir? My husband left me this business empire. Who will inherit it? Girls? Girls who will marry and take their husbands' names." Other patients in the waiting room were staring now. Nurses whispered. Dr. Adeyemi looked uncomfortable but remained silent. The Okafors were influential people in Lagos, and hospitals needed their patronage. Chinedu finally spoke, his voice cold as ice. "Let's go home. We need to discuss this as a family." As they left the hospital, Amara felt the weight of judgment following her. In the parking lot, she broke down completely, her sobs echoing between the luxury cars. 8-year-old Ada, who had been waiting in the car with the driver, ran to her mother. Mama, what's wrong?" The little girl's face crumpled with worry. Amara pulled her daughter close, trying to compose herself. "Nothing, my darling. Mama is tired." But Ada was smart. She had heard the shouting from the car. She had seen her grandmother's angry face. And she understood more than any 8-year-old should have to. That evening, the entire Okafor family gathered at the mansion in Lekki, a sprawling estate with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and enough rooms to house 20 people comfortably. But there was no comfort for Amara as she stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by her husband's family like a defendant awaiting judgment. Uncle Emeka sat sprawled in an armchair, a satisfied smirk on his face. He had always resented Chinedu's position as the oldest son and primary heir. If Chinedu had no male heirs, perhaps the business empire would eventually fall to him. This is serious. Mama Chinedu announced to the assembled family. 8 years of marriage, 3 pregnancies, 3 girls. This woman has failed our family. Perhaps it's not her fault, Auntie Ifioma said with false sympathy. Some women just can't produce sons. Their bodies are defective. Amara flinched at the word, defective, as if she were a broken appliance to be discarded. Maybe she should see a native doctor, Uncle Emeka suggested. There could be a spiritual blockage, or a curse from her village. I've given this much thought, Mama Chinedu continued, pacing the room like a prosecutor. Chinedu needs a son. Our family business, the Okafor Empire, needs a male heir. If Amara cannot provide this, then... She paused dramatically. Then we must find someone who can... Amara's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying you have proven yourself incapable of fulfilling your primary duty as a wife. A man needs a son. But Mama, our daughters are brilliant. Amara pleaded desperately. Ada is top of her class. Zainab is so creative and smart. They are blessings. Blessings. Uncle Emeka laughed cruelly. Blessings that will marry other men and build other families? What use are daughters to the Okafor legacy? Amara turned to her husband, her eyes pleading. Chinedu, please. Say something. These are your children. Our children. For a long moment, Chinedu said nothing. He sat in his leather chair, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. The silence stretched out painfully. Finally, he looked up at her with eyes that had gone dead. My mother is right. Amara, I need a son. You've had 3 chances, and you've given me 3 daughters. I think it's time we accept that this isn't working. The room tilted. Amara gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. What are you saying? I'm saying I want a divorce. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. You can't be serious, Amara whispered, her voice breaking. I'm 7 months pregnant with your child. With another girl, Mama Chinedu interjected. Another mouth to feed with no benefit to this family. I'll give you 48 hours to pack your things, Chinedu said, his voice mechanical, as if he were conducting a business transaction rather than destroying his family. You can take the girls. I'll provide minimal child support, but I won't be responsible for raising daughters when I need a son. Amara collapsed to her knees, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Please, Chinedu, please. I love you. We can try again. Maybe after this one. I've waited 8 years, Amara. I'm 32 years old. I don't have time to waste on more girls. Think about Ada and Zainab. They need their father. They'll be fine. Women are resilient. Auntie Ifioma said dismissively. Besides, you can remarry someone less ambitious. Uncle Emeka added with barely concealed glee. Maybe someone from your village who doesn't need sons. A farmer, perhaps. The cruelty was suffocating. Amara looked around the room at these people she had called family for 8 years. Not one face showed compassion. Not one voice spoke in her defense. The decision is made. Mama Chinedu declared with finality. You have 48 hours. And Amara, her voice turned venomous. Take your girls and your bad luck far away from this house. You are the curse on this family. Maybe without you, God will finally bless us with the son we deserve. That night, Amara packed her belongings through a blur of tears. Her hands shook as she folded her clothes. The designer dresses Chinedu had bought her, when times were good, now feeling like costumes from a play that had ended badly. Ada and Zainab sat on the bed, watching their mother, confusion and fear in their young eyes. Mama, are we going on a trip? 5-year-old Zainab asked hopefully. Yes, my darling. A long trip. When is Daddy coming with us? Ada asked, her voice small. At 8. She understood more than her sister. Amara couldn't answer. She simply pulled both girls into her arms and held them as she sobbed. Her pregnant belly pressed between them, the unborn daughter already rejected before she'd even entered the world. Later that night, after she'd put her daughters to bed in the guest room, They were no longer welcome in the main house. Amara stood alone in the darkness of the room that had been hers for 8 years. She placed both hands on her swollen belly. "I'm so sorry, my baby," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "I'm so sorry you're coming into this pain. But I promise all three of you, you are not worthless. You are not mistakes. You are my treasures. And one day, somehow, I will prove to the world that daughters are blessings too." In the adjoining room, 8-year-old Ada lay awake, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Through the thin walls, she could hear her mother crying. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she understood enough. They were being thrown away because they were girls. That night, something hardened in young Ada's heart. A determination was born. One day, she thought fiercely, "I will be so successful that Daddy will regret choosing boys over us. I will make Mama proud. I will prove we were enough." Outside the window, Legos sparkled with city lights, indifferent to the family being torn apart within. Tomorrow, Amara would leave this mansion, this life, this family. She would leave with nothing but her 2 daughters, her unborn child, and a broken heart. But she would also leave with something else, a fierce determination to raise her daughters to know their worth, regardless of what the world or their father said about them. Can you believe they threw her out while pregnant just because the baby was a girl? What would you do in Amara's situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is only the beginning of the story. If your heart is breaking for Amara and her daughters, smash that like button and subscribe, because next chapter shows the painful struggle she went through that will make you cry. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. The small 2-bedroom apartment in Surulere was a far cry from the Lekki mansion. The paint peeled from the walls, revealing patches of gray concrete underneath. One ceiling fan, only one, struggled to circulate the humid Lagos air. The toilet ran constantly. The kitchen tap dripped, and the neighbors' arguments filtered through the thin walls at all hours. But it was all Amara could afford. She stood in the empty living room that first day, 7 months pregnant, with her 2 confused daughters and 3 suitcases containing everything they now owned. The landlord had demanded 6 months' rent up front, 180,000 naira that had depleted most of her savings. "Mama, where will we sleep?" Zainab asked, her little voice echoing in the bare room. Amara looked at the stained concrete floor and felt her throat tighten. "We'll get a mattress tomorrow, my love. Tonight, we'll make an adventure. We'll sleep on our clothes like camping." Ada, ever perceptive, saw through the forced cheerfulness. At 8 years old, she was learning that adults lied to protect children from painful truths. That night, Amara lay awake on the hard floor. Her daughters curled against her and allowed herself to truly absorb what had happened. Her marriage was over. Her life as she knew it was over. She was about to become a single mother of 3 daughters with a job that barely paid enough for one person to survive in Lagos, let alone 4. The weight of it crushed her chest until she couldn't breathe. She carefully extracted herself from her sleeping daughters and stumbled to the bathroom. There, under the flickering fluorescent light, Amara Okafor, former wife of one of Lagos's most prominent businessmen, hold her degree in finance, once confident and capable, collapsed onto the dirty bathroom floor and sobbed until she thought her lungs would burst. "God, why?" she whispered desperately into the darkness. "What'd I do wrong? I was a good wife. I loved him. I gave him children. Why am I being punished for something I can't control?" But God, it seemed, wasn't answering that night. The next morning, Amara called her mother in Enugu. Her father had passed away 5 years earlier, and her mother lived in their modest family compound with Amara's younger brother. "Mama, I need help," Amara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "NWAM, what happened? Why do you sound like this?" When Amara explained, her mother wept. "Come home to the village. You and the girls can stay here." But Amara knew that was impossible. Her mother's pension was barely enough to sustain herself. Adding 3 children and a pregnant daughter would break her completely. Besides, Amara had her banking job in Lagos, a job she desperately needed to keep. "I'll be fine, Mama. I just need a small loan to buy a mattress and some food until my salary comes." Her mother sent 20,000 naira, all she could spare. It arrived with a message. I wish I could do more, my daughter. I am praying for you. Prayers. Everyone offered prayers. But prayers didn't pay rent or buy milk for children. Amara continued going to work at Diamond Trust Bank in Marina, her pregnant belly growing larger by the day. She wore the same 3 work outfits in rotation, washing them at night, and hoping they'd dry by morning in Lagos's humid air. Her colleagues noticed. Amara, are you okay? Her supervisor, Mrs. Okonkwo, asked one day. You look tired. I'm fine, Ma. Just pregnancy. But Mrs. Okonkwo had heard the rumors. Lagos society was small among the elite circles, and gossip traveled fast. I heard about your situation with your husband. Amara's face burned with shame. It's a private matter, Ma. Of course. But the pity in Mrs. Okonkwo's eyes was unbearable. Later that day, Amara overheard 2 colleagues talking in the break room. Can you imagine? Thrown out because she can't produce sons. That was Folishade, who always had an opinion. My husband would never keep a woman who only births girls. Ngozi replied matter-of-factly. What's the point? You need at least 1 son to secure your place. I heard the family has already found a new wife for him, a young girl from a good family. Amara stood frozen outside the door, her hand on her swollen belly. A new wife. Already. She rushed to the bathroom and vomited, though whether from morning sickness or emotional distress. She couldn't tell. She looked at herself in the mirror. Puffy eyes, weight loss everywhere except her belly, cheap clothes, exhaustion written across every feature. Who are you? She thought, staring at the stranger in the mirror. What happened to the confident woman you used to be? The slide into depression was gradual, but inevitable. Amara would put on a brave face during the day, getting Ada and Zainab ready for school, going to work, pretending everything was fine. But at night, after ensuring her daughters were asleep, she would stand on the small balcony of their apartment and stare at the street below, 3 floors up. Would it be enough? Would it be quick? Your daughters need you, a voice in her head would whisper. Don't leave them alone. But another voice, darker, more persuasive, would counter. They'd be better off without you. Your mother would take them. They wouldn't have to suffer your failure. One night, Ada woke up to use the bathroom and found her mother standing at the balcony railing, 1 leg over the edge. Mama? The small voice shattered whatever dark spell had taken hold. Amara scrambled back, her heart racing with horror at what she'd almost done. Mama, are you okay? Ada's eyes were wide with fear. Amara dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace, sobbing. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Mama was just looking at the stars. But Ada had seen, and that night, the 8-year-old girl climbed into her mother's mat and held her hand tightly, as if afraid to let go, as if she knew, somehow, that her mother was drowning and needed an anchor. The next morning, Amara looked at her reflection and made a decision. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Maybe later, when her daughters were grown. But not now. They needed her. I will survive this, she told herself. For them. But survival came at a cost. There were days when food was scarce. Amara would pack lunch for her daughters, bread and eggs when she could afford it, plain bread when she couldn't, and tell them she'd eaten at work. She hadn't. Her own lunch money went toward their school fees. Ada noticed. Mama, why don't you eat with us anymore? Mama has a big lunch at work. My dear, the bank feeds us very well. The lie tasted bitter, but what else could she say? I'm starving myself so you can eat? At school, the bullying began. Children are cruel, especially when they sense vulnerability. Ada's father threw them away, a classmate taunted. Her mama can't make boys, so they're trash now. Ada came home with tears streaming down her face. Amara held her daughter and cried alongside her, feeling utterly helpless. She couldn't protect her children from the cruelty of the world. Zainab, only 5, didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew Mama cried a lot now. She knew their apartment was small and hot. She knew they ate less than they used to, and she knew somehow that it was all because of her and her sister being girls. Mama, Zainab asked one evening, if I was a boy, would Daddy still love us? The question broke something in Amara. She pulled both daughters close and spoke with fierce intensity. Listen to me, both of you. You are not the problem. Do you hear me? You are perfect exactly as you are. Your father made a mistake. The biggest mistake of his life. But that is his failure, not yours. Then why does everyone say girls are not good enough? Ada asked, her young face troubled. Because people are wrong. People are ignorant. One day, I promise you this, one day, you'll both be so successful, so brilliant, that everyone will see how wrong they were. Meanwhile, in Lekki, Mama Chinedu was already implementing her plan. Within 2 months of Amara's departure, she had identified the perfect replacement. Olivia Nwosu, a beautiful 24-year-old from a struggling family in ABA. Olivia was everything Mama Chinedu wanted. Young, desperate for money, and willing to do whatever it took to escape poverty. The fact that she was currently dating someone else, a poor mechanic named Obinna, was irrelevant. Mama Chinedu offered her a deal that was impossible to refuse. Marry my son. Give me a grandson. Your family will never struggle again. Olivia agreed immediately. Her mechanic boyfriend could wait. Opportunity like this didn't come twice. 8 months after Amar's expulsion, the wedding took place. It was a lavish affair at Oriental Hotel. 500 guests, live band, expensive aso-ebi. Chinedu went through the motions mechanically, his mind occasionally wandering to Amara and wondering if she'd given birth yet. But his mother's iron will kept him focused. This is your fresh start, Mama Chinedu told him firmly. That woman and her girls are your past. Olivia will give you sons. Amara heard about the wedding through Facebook. A former colleague, not knowing the situation, had tagged her in photos. Congrats to your ex. Amara stared at the photos for hours. Chinedu in his elegant Igbada. Olivia in her white wedding dress, beaming with triumph. The elaborate decorations. The celebration. He'd replaced her in 8 months. 8 months. As if their 10-year marriage, their 2 daughters, their life together. As if it had all meant nothing. That night was the darkest yet. Amara took out a bottle of sleeping pills she'd gotten from the pharmacy. She counted them. 20 pills. Would that be enough? She was 9 months pregnant now, her belly huge and uncomfortable. The baby would come any day. Another girl entering a world that didn't want her. Maybe it would be better. A kick, strong and insistent against her ribs. Amara looked down at her belly, where her unborn daughter was moving, fighting, living, and something shifted. This child, this innocent girl growing inside her, deserved a chance, deserved a mother who would fight for her, not abandon her before she'd even drawn her first breath. Amara poured the pills down the toilet and watched them swirl away. Then she stood in front of the mirror, placed both hands on her belly and spoke aloud. Your father doesn't want you. Your grandmother called you a curse. But I want you. I want you so much. And I will fight for you. For all 3 of you. I will survive this. We will survive this. 2 weeks later, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, her water broke. Labor began fast and fierce. Amara had to wake Ada and tell her to watch Zainab while she took a taxi to the general hospital in Yaba, the government hospital, because she couldn't afford the private hospitals anymore. Mama, don't go. 8-year-old Ada clung to her mother, terrified. I have to, my love. Your sister is coming. I'll be back soon, I promise. The taxi ride through empty Lagos streets was lonely. At the hospital, the nurses were overworked and impatient. Where's your husband? One asked, filling out forms. I don't have one. The nurse's expression shifted to judgment. You should have thought of that before getting pregnant. Amara wanted to scream that she'd had a husband, a home, a life. But what was the point? Labor lasted 16 hours. 16 hours of pain with no one to hold her hand, no one to encourage her, no one to wipe her forehead. Just the clinical efficiency of nurses who'd seen hundreds of births and had no time for emotional support. When her daughter finally emerged, small, perfect, beautiful, Amara burst into tears. Not just from relief or exhaustion, but from overwhelming love and grief intertwined. It's a girl, the nurse announced flatly. 7.2 pounds. Healthy. Kayamika, Amara whispered, holding her daughter for the first time. Your name is Kayamika. God is beautiful. And so are you. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. She stayed in the hospital for 2 days, the minimum required. The bill was 25,000 naira, which she'd saved bit by bit. Taking public transport home with a 2-day-old baby was terrifying, but taxis were too expensive. When she arrived at the apartment, Ada and Zainab were waiting eagerly with the neighbor who'd watched them. Mama, Mama, can we see the baby? They squealed. Amara introduced her daughters to their sister. Ada gently touched Kayamika's tiny hand, and the baby's fingers closed around hers. She's so small, Ada whispered in wonder. I'll protect her, Mama. I promise. That night, the 4 of them, Amara and her 3 daughters, slept on the single mattress they now owned. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but they were together. They were alive. They had survived. 10 months later, news reached Amara that rocked her world again. Olivia had given birth to a son. Dubum, lead me, they named him. The celebration was massive. Mama Chinidu hosted a party that lasted 3 days. Finally, she had her grandson, her heir, the boy who would carry the Okafor legacy. Amara heard about it from her former neighbors in Lekki. They still had her number and loved to gossip. You should have seen the party. Amara, it was like a royal coronation. They slaughtered 3 cows. The decorations alone must have cost millions. That night, Amara cried harder than she had in months. Not just because her husband had moved on, not just because he now had the son he'd always wanted, but because it confirmed what she'd always feared. Her daughters truly hadn't been enough. If she'd just been able to produce a boy, her life would still be intact. The depression threatened to pull her under again. She stood on the balcony, staring down at the street below. He has a son now. You're completely irrelevant. Your daughters will grow up knowing they were rejected for a boy. But then Kayamika cried from inside, and Zainab called out, Mama, where are you? Amara took a deep breath. Then another. She walked back inside and picked up her baby daughter. She looked at Ada and Zainab, watching her with worried eyes. Listen to me, girls, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Today, your father celebrated a son. But one day, I promise you this, the world will celebrate you. All 3 of you. And when that day comes, he will realize what he lost. Not because you're boys, but because you're extraordinary. Can you believe that? Can you believe me? Ada nodded solemnly. I believe you, Mama. That night, Amara wrote in a diary she'd started keeping. Partly for herself, partly as a record for her daughters when they were older. December 15, 2005. Today I learned that Chinida's new wife gave birth to a son. The pain is unbearable, but I have decided something. I will not let this destroy me. I will not let my daughters grow up believing they are less than anyone. I will work 3 jobs if I have to. I will sell my blood if necessary. But I will raise these 3 girls to be so brilliant, so successful, so extraordinary that the whole world will see what Chinida threw away. This is my vow. This is my purpose. They rejected my daughters. One day, my daughters will be the ones doing the rejecting. God, give me strength. Give me time. Give me the chance to prove them all wrong. And with that vow, Amara began her long, painful journey of transformation, not just of her circumstances, but of herself. She would need to become stronger than she'd ever been, fiercer than she'd ever imagined, because she wasn't just raising 3 daughters anymore. She was raising 3 queens who would one day rule the very world that had tried to crush them. My heart is broken. Can you imagine giving birth alone, and then hearing your ex-husband celebrating a son? Have you ever felt this kind of pain? Drop a comment if you're crying right now. If Amara's struggle is touching your soul, smash that like button and subscribe, because next chapter is where everything changes. 20 years later, those rejected daughters become unstoppable. You don't want to miss the transformation. Hit that bell for notifications. Dr. Ada Okafor adjusted her surgical scrubs as she walked to the corridors of Lagoon Hospital in Victoria Island. At 28, she was one of the youngest and most brilliant neurosurgeons in West Africa. Her success story had been featured in The Guardian, Vanguard, and even BBC Africa. From rejected daughter to life-saving surgeon, the headlines read, "Dr. Okafor, we have that consult in 30 minutes." Her assistant reminded her. "Thank you, Ton." Ada smiled, checking her phone. A message from her mother. "Dinner tonight? Your sisters will be there. I'm making your favorite, Ofn Sala." Ada smiled. Her mother, Amara, now 48 years old, looked nothing like the broken woman who'd been thrown out 20 years ago. She was radiant, confident, living in a beautiful home in Lekki Phase 1. Ironically, just 2 streets away from the mansion that had once belonged to the Okafors. Her daughters had bought it for her 3 years ago when their various businesses began flourishing. As Ada walked her car, a sleek Range Rover Sport, she thought about how far they'd all come. It hadn't been easy. Those early years had been brutal. Her mother working 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Ada herself taking on tutoring gigs at 14 to help with family expenses. Zainab coding websites for small businesses from their cramped apartment. Even young Kayamika had helped, modeling for small clothing brands to earn extra money. But they'd made it. Against all odds, they'd made it. Meanwhile, across town in Lekki Phase 1, Zainab Okafor sat in her glass-walled office overlooking the Lagos skyline. At 25, she was the CEO of PayWave, a revolutionary fintech company that had transformed how Nigerians made mobile payments. Her company was now valued at $50 million, with offices in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, and plans to expand to South Africa. Forbes Africa had named her one of 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch. She'd been invited to speak at tech conferences in Silicon Valley. International investors were constantly reaching out, and she'd done it all herself, well, with her mother's unwavering support and her sister's encouragement. Zainab's phone buzzed. A text from Kayamika. "Can't make dinner tonight, sis. Shooting a commercial in Lekki, but save me some food. Love you." Zainab smiled. Her baby sister had become a Nollywood sensation. At just 20 years old, Kayamika Okafor was everywhere, billboards, TV screens, magazine covers. She'd recently won Best New Actress at the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards and had just signed a major endorsement deal with Coca-Cola worth 30 million naira. What made it even sweeter? Kayamika had never known her father. She'd grown up hearing about him, of course. But to her, he was just a man who'd made a terrible choice. She hadn't spent her childhood longing for his approval. Instead, she'd channeled all her energy into becoming extraordinary. And she had. Life was good for the Okafor daughters. But across town, in the original Okafor mansion, life was falling apart. Chinedu Okafor, now 52, sat in his study staring at his laptop screen. Financial reports painted a grim picture. The family business, Okafor Enterprises, once worth hundreds of millions, was drowning in debt. Years of mismanagement by his brother Emeka, combined with poor investment decisions and the economic downturn, had brought them to the brink of bankruptcy. His mother, Mama Chinedu, now 75, was upstairs in bed, sick with diabetes and heart problems. The medical bills were crushing. Private hospitals had stopped extending them credit. And his son, Chinedu's jaw clenched. Dubum, 19 years old, was supposed to be the heir, the answer to all their dreams. Instead, he was a spoiled, entitled disappointment who'd failed out of 2 universities and spent his days clubbing and spending money they no longer had. Chinedu's phone buzzed. Instagram notification. His daughters, his real daughters, were trending again. This time it was a video of Ada performing a successful surgery on a prominent politician. The comments were full of praise. "Dr. Ada is a national treasure. This woman is saving lives every day. Queen behavior." He scrolled to Zainab's page. She just posted about PayWave's expansion to Kenya. Hundreds of comments congratulated her. Then Kayamika's page, a behind-the-scenes video from her latest movie shoot. 5 million followers. 5 million people who adored his youngest daughter. The daughter he'd never met. The daughter whose birth he dismissed as irrelevant. The daughter who'd been born while he was already planning his wedding to Olivia. Chinedu closed his eyes against the wave of regret that threatened to overwhelm him. 20 years of watching his daughters from afar through social media. 20 years of knowing he'd made the worst mistake of his life. 20 years too late to fix it. A scream from upstairs jolted him from his thoughts. Chinedu, Chinedu, come quickly. He raced upstairs to find his brother Emeka in Dubum's room, his face pale with panic. We need to get him to a hospital now. He's been in an accident. Dubum lay on his bed, conscious but in obvious pain. His friends had brought him home after his Range Rover, gifted to him for his 19th birthday, had crashed on Lekkie Expressway. He'd been street racing. Again. I'm fine, Dubum groaned, just bruised. You're not fine. Emeka snapped. You're vomiting blood. We're taking you to the hospital. They rushed him to Lagoon Hospital, the closest and best, though they owed the hospital money from Mama Chinedu's previous admissions. In the emergency room, doctors quickly assessed Dubum's condition. He has internal bleeding. A young doctor explained urgently, we need to operate immediately. But first, we need to type and cross-match for blood transfusion. Mr. Okafor, what's your blood type? O positive, Chinedu answered. And the mother? She's not here. She's A positive. Olivia had long since disappeared from their lives, leaving 2 years after Dubum's birth when a wealthier man had shown interest. But that was a humiliation Chinedu rarely discussed. The doctors took blood samples and rushed Dubum into surgery. Hours passed. Chinedu sat in the waiting room, his mother having been brought in by ambulance as well. The stress had triggered her heart condition. Finally, a doctor emerged. But it wasn't the surgeon. It was a different doctor, a woman in a white coat, looking at a tablet with confused expression. Chinedu's breath caught. He knew that face. Older now, more mature, but unmistakable. Ada, his daughter, his firstborn daughter, whom he'd last seen when she was 8 years old, crying as her mother packed their belongings. Mr. Okafor? Ada's voice was professional, controlled. She didn't acknowledge their relationship. I'm Dr. Okafor. I need to speak with you about the blood typing results. Is my son okay? Chinedu managed to ask. Your son is stable. The surgery was successful. But there's an issue we need to discuss. Can we speak privately? They moved to a consultation room. Ada closed the door and sat across from him, her expression unreadable. Mr. Okafor, the blood typing revealed something unusual. You said you're O positive and the mother is A positive, correct? Yes. Your son, Dubum, his blood type is AB negative. Chinedu stared at her, not understanding. What does that mean? Ada's voice was carefully neutral, though something flickered in her eyes. It means it's genetically impossible for you to be his biological father. With your blood type and the mother's blood type, you cannot produce a child with AB negative blood. The room tilted. What were you saying? I'm saying we need to run a paternity test. There may have been a mistake in our records, or, she paused delicately, other circumstances we should investigate. Chinedu felt like he'd been punched in the chest. A paternity test. I've already ordered it. Given the medical necessity and the genetic impossibility, it's standard procedure. Results will take 3 days. 3 days. 72 hours of hell. Chinedu couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was hearing. Ada stood. Your son will need to remain hospitalized for observation. We'll discuss the test results when they're ready. She paused at the door. By the way, Mr. Okafor, that young man in there? He's been coming to this hospital 3 times in the past year for alcohol poisoning and drug-related issues. You might want to pay attention to that. Then she was gone, leaving Chinedu sitting in stunned silence. The next 3 days were torture. Chinedu couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He watched Dubum recover in his hospital bed. This boy he'd sacrificed everything for, this heir he destroyed his family to obtain, and wondered if it had all been a lie. Mama Chinedu, stabilized but weak, demanded to know why he looked so disturbed. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. Olivia. Where was Olivia? He tried calling her number, disconnected. He tracked her down through mutual friends. She was living in Abuja now, married to a senator, living lavishly. When he finally reached her, her voice was cold. "What do you want, Chinedu?" "I need to ask you something. About Dubum. About before we got married." Silence. "Then what about it? Were you seeing someone else?" "Before our wedding." More silence. Then a bitter laugh. "After 19 years, now you ask? Now you care. Answer the question, Olivia." "Yes." The word was sharp, defiant. "I was with my ex-boyfriend, Obinna, a week before your mother approached me with her marriage proposal." Chinedu's world shattered. "And Dubum?" "I don't know, okay? I don't know. When your mother offered me that life, that money, I took it. I was poor, Chinedu. I was desperate. And yes, I'd been with Obinna, but I thought, I hoped, I convinced myself the baby was yours." "You knew? You knew and you said nothing?" "What was I supposed to say?" "Sorry, rich family. I might be pregnant by my poor mechanic boyfriend." "They would have thrown me out. I had a chance at a better life. I took it. You destroyed my family for a lie. You destroyed your family." Olivia shot back. "You threw away a wife and 3 daughters because you were obsessed with having a son. Don't put this all on me. I may have lied, but you were the one who chose boys over family you already had." She hung up. Chinedu sat in his car in the hospital parking lot and wept. 20 years. 20 years of his life based on a lie. On the 3rd day, the DNA results arrived. Dr. Ada Okafor delivered them personally, her face professionally neutral, but her eyes holding something that might have been vindication. "The paternity test shows 0% probability that you're Dubum's biological father." The paper in Chinedu's hands trembled. Black and white. Scientific. Undeniable. Dubum was not his son. The heir that had been celebrated with 3 days of parties, 3 slaughtered cows, musicians, and thousands of guests wasn't Okafor at all. "I need to tell my mother," Chinedu whispered. "That's your decision," Ada said coolly. "But Mr. Okafor? That woman you threw away 20 years ago? She raised 3 daughters who became more successful than your entire family combined. And she did it alone, with none of your resources, none of your money, none of your support. You rejected us because we weren't boys. But we didn't need to be boys to be extraordinary. We just needed a mother who believed in us." She left him sitting there with the test results, and Chinedu knew his life would never be the same. When he told Mama Chinedu, she collapsed. Her blood pressure spiked so high they had to admit her immediately. The woman who had orchestrated Amara's destruction, who had insisted on a male heir above all else, who had celebrated Dubum's birth as the Salvation family. She learned that it had all been for nothing. The news leaked. Someone at the hospital, a nurse perhaps, or a clerk, sold the story to a blogger. Within hours, #Okafor Family Scandal was trending on Nigerian Twitter. They threw out 3 daughters for a son that wasn't even theirs. This is divine justice. Karma is real. Those poor girls. Rejected for nothing. The mockery was brutal and public. The same society that had whispered about Amara's failure now laughed at the Okafor family's humiliation. Their business partners distanced themselves. Their social standing crumbled. Everything they'd built their identity on, the male heir, the family legacy, the Okafor name, revealed as a house of cards built on lies. And somewhere in Lekki, in a beautiful home filled with love and laughter, 3 extraordinary daughters sat with their mother and watched the news coverage with a mixture of vindication and sadness. Should we feel sorry for them? Kayamaka asked. Amara looked at her 3 daughters, her brilliant surgeon, her tech genius, her rising star, and smiled sadly. Feel whatever you feel, my loves. But remember, they didn't lose you. You never belonged to people who couldn't see your worth. They lost themselves. That's their tragedy, not yours. Ada received a call that evening. Mama Chinedu's condition was critical. She needed immediate open-heart surgery. And Ada was one of only 3 surgeons in Lagos capable of performing it. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who'd called her worthless now needed her to save her life. What will you do? Zainab asked her sister. Ada stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she looked at her mother. The woman who'd sacrificed everything, who'd stood on that balcony contemplating death, but chose to live for them, who'd worked 3 jobs and gone hungry so they could eat. "I'll call them back tomorrow," Ada said quietly. "Right now, I just want to have dinner with my family. The family that actually matters." And so they ate their mother's oath in Sala, laughing and talking about their dreams, their plans, their futures. 3 daughters who'd been thrown away like trash had become queens. And the family that rejected them was learning, far too late, what they'd really lost. Oh my God, the son isn't even his? 20 years of rejecting those girls for a child that wasn't even his own. Can you believe this karma? Drop a comment if you think this is divine justice. What would you do if you were Ada right now? Would you save the grandmother who rejected you? Like this video if your mind is blown, and subscribe, because next chapter is where the real confrontation happens. The daughters face their father after 20 years. You don't want to miss this. Hit that notification bell now. 2 weeks after the DNA scandal broke, Chinedu Okafor sat in his car outside a beautiful modern home in Lekki Phase 1. His hands gripped the steering wheel, so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The house before him was elegant but not ostentatious. Cream and white exterior, well-manicured lawn, a Range Rover and a Tesla parked in the driveway. His daughter's cars. The daughters he'd thrown away. He'd found the address through a private investigator. It had cost him money he didn't have, but he was desperate. Mama Chinedu's condition had worsened dramatically. She'd suffered another cardiac episode 3 days ago, and the doctors at Lagoon Hospital had been blunt. Without immediate surgery, she had weeks, maybe days. And only one surgeon could perform the complex procedure she needed. Dr. Ada Okafor, his daughter, the 8-year-old girl who'd watched him choose his mother's approval over his family. Chinedu had tried reaching out through official channels first. He'd called the hospital, but Ada's assistant had politely informed him that Dr. Okafor's surgery schedule was fully booked for the next 3 months. He'd sent emails, ignored. He'd tried reaching Amara through Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. All his messages sat unread or were blocked. So here he was, reduced to showing up unannounced at the home his daughters had built, the home he'd had no part in creating. Taking a deep breath, Chinedu stepped out of his car, a 7-year-old Toyota Camry, a far cry from the Mercedes he'd once driven. The Okafor wealth had evaporated faster than anyone expected. Creditors were circling. The mansion in Lekki was mortgaged to the hilt. Uncle Emeka's mismanagement had been worse than anyone realized. He pressed the doorbell. A security camera swiveled to face him. Moments later, a voice crackled through the intercom. "Yes? Who is it?" My name is Chinedu Okafor. I need to speak with Mrs. Amara Okafor. It's urgent. It's a family emergency." Silence. Long enough that Chinedu thought he'd been dismissed. Then, "Wait there." 5 minutes passed. 10. Chinedu stood at the gate, feeling the weight of every one of his 52 years. His hair had gone almost completely gray. His face was lined with stress. He looked like a man who'd lost everything, because he had. Finally, the gate buzzed open. Chinedu walked up the curved driveway, past flowering plants and modern outdoor lighting. Everything about this home spoke of success, taste, comfort. As he approached the front door, it opened, and there she was, Amara, at 48. She looked better than she had at 28. Her hair was styled beautifully, natural and elegant. She wore a simple but expensive-looking dress. Her skin glowed with health and confidence. But it was her eyes that struck him most. They were hard as diamonds. "Amara," he breathed. "It's Mrs. Okafor to you," she said coldly, not moving from the doorway. "We're not familiar. What do you want?" The dismissal in her voice cut like a knife. But he had no right to expect warmth. "I need to talk to you. About Ada. About my mother." "Your mother?" Amara's eyebrow arched. "The same mother who threw me out pregnant? Who called my daughters worthless? That mother? She's dying, Amara. She needs surgery. Only Ada can save her life." Amara finished, a bitter smile playing at her lips. "Yes, I heard about your little problem. The hospital called me as the next of kin for Ada. I know everything. I also know about your other problem. About Dubum. Chinedu flinched. You saw the news. All of Lagos saw the news. Chinedu. All of Nigeria. Actually, it's quite the trending topic. The family that threw away 3 daughters for a son that wasn't even theirs. She tilted her head. Karma has a wonderful sense of timing, doesn't it? I know. I deserve all of it. But Amara, please. No. Her voice was steel. You don't get to please me. You don't get to show up after 20 years and ask for favors. I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for my mother's life. Your mother's life? Amara's voice rose, and for the first time, real anger broke through a controlled facade. Where was your concern for MY life when she had me thrown out 7 months pregnant? Where was your concern for your daughters' lives when they went hungry because you sent barely enough money to feed 1 child, let alone 3? I was wrong. Wrong. Amara stepped closer, her eyes blazing. Wrong is forgetting someone's birthday. Wrong is being late to dinner. What you did was evil. You destroyed your family because your mother whispered in your ear, and you were too weak to stand up to her. Before Chinedu could respond, the sound of car engines filled the air. 3 vehicles pulled into the driveway, a Range Rover Sport, a Tesla Model X, and a Mercedes-Benz. His daughters. Chinedu's breath caught as 3 women stepped out of their cars. He would have known them anywhere, even though he'd only seen them in photos and videos for 20 years. Ada stepped out of the Range Rover first, still in her hospital scrubs under a designer jacket. At 28, she had Amara's eyes but her own fierce determination written across her features. Zainab emerged from the Tesla, wearing a power suit that screamed success. At 25, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire from nothing. Kayamika climbed out of the Mercedes, her natural beauty enhanced by professional makeup and styling. At 20, she was already a household name, and she knew it. All 3 stopped dead when they saw the man standing at their mother's doorway. Mama? Ada's voice was sharp with concern. Who is this? Amara's voice was steady. Girls, meet your father. The silence that followed was deafening. A bird chirped somewhere. Traffic hummed in the distance. But among the 4 people standing in that driveway, no one breathed. Kayamika spoke first, her voice cold with curiosity. So this is him? This is the man who threw us away. Chinedu's voice cracked. My daughters. My beautiful daughters. You're extraordinary. We know, Zainab said flatly. We've been telling ourselves that for 20 years since you decided we weren't good enough. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. I was wrong. You were wrong, Ada interrupted, walking closer. She was tall, almost as tall as her father. You were wrong 20 years ago. And now you're here because you need something. Let me guess. Mama Chinedu needs her heart surgery, and I'm the only one who can do it? Chinedu nodded miserably. Ada laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. The irony is almost poetic. The worthless girl is now the only one who can save the woman who called her worthless. Ada, please. I'm Dr. Okafor to you. Ada cut him off. We're not family. We're barely acquaintances. You're my daughters. No! Zainab stepped forward. We're Mama's daughters. She's the one who raised us. She's the one who went hungry so we could eat. She's the one who worked 3 jobs so we could go to school. She's the one who stood on a balcony at rock bottom and chose to live for us. Where were you? Chinedu's face went pale. What balcony? What are you talking about? You don't even know, Amara said quietly. You don't know that I almost killed myself. Multiple times. You don't know that Ada found me one night, ready to jump. You don't know the hell you put us through. Amara, She's Mrs. Okafor. Ada snapped. You lost the right to say her name casually when you divorced her while she was pregnant. Kayamika, who had been silent, finally spoke. Her voice was eerily calm. I don't even know you. I've seen you in photos. I've heard stories. But to me, you're just a man who shares my DNA. You weren't at my birth. You weren't at my first day of school. You weren't there when I won my first award. You're a stranger. The words hit Chinedu like physical blows. He sank down onto the front step, his head in his hands. I know all of this. I destroyed my family. I destroyed everything that mattered. And I have to live with that every single day. Good, Zainab said coldly. You should live with it. But my mother, your grandmother, she's dying. She needs help. I know we don't deserve it. I know we deserve nothing from you. But I'm begging you. I'm begging all of you. Don't let her die because of my mistakes. Your mistakes. Ada's voice rose. Your mistakes? She was the architect of this whole disaster. She's the one who orchestrated my mother's expulsion. She's the one who celebrated when you married Olivia. She's the one who threw that massive party for a grandson who wasn't even your son. She knows she was wrong. She's sick, she's old, and she knows. She knows now, Amara interrupted. 20 years later, when she needs something, now she knows. How convenient. Chinedu looked up at them, tears streaming down his face. I'm not just here about my mother. I need to tell you, the business is failing. We're bankrupt. Uncle Emeka embezzled millions. The company my father built, the legacy we destroyed your family to preserve, it's all gone. And you want us to fix that too? Zainab asked incredulously. No, I needed you to know. Everything we did to you, all the pain we caused, it was for nothing. The business, the legacy, the male heir, none of it mattered. What mattered was family. And I destroyed mine for a lie. Yes, you did, Kayamaka said simply. Chinedu pulled himself together enough to continue. Uncle Emeka's son, Tobe, needs a job. He's desperate. I know Zainab, your company is hiring. My company hires on merit. Zainab cut him off. Not family connections. Especially not family that didn't exist when it was convenient. And Auntie Ifeoma's daughter wants a break into Nollywood. She thinks because Kayamaka is successful. Let me stop you right there, Kayamaka interrupted. I got where I am through talent, hard work, and determination, not through family connections. If she's talented, she'll make it. If not, she won't. I'm not anybody's shortcut. I understand, Chinedu said quietly. I understand I have no right to ask anything. I had to try. For my family. For your family? Ada's voice was dangerous. Where was that concern for family 20 years ago? Where was it when we were your family? I was wrong. Stop saying that. Ada exploded. Stop saying you were wrong like it's some small mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Every single day for 20 years, you chose not to reach out, not to apologize, not to check if we were alive or dead. You chose to watch from afar while we struggled. So don't stand here now and tell us you were wrong. We know you were wrong. What we want to know is why you think that matters now. Chinedu had no answer because she was right. You were wrong meant nothing. It changed nothing. It didn't undo 20 years of pain. Amara, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. Chinedu, it's time for you to leave. But Ada, the surgery. My daughters will make their own decisions about that. Amara said, they're adults. They're brilliant, accomplished women who don't need my permission or yours to decide what they want to do. But this conversation is over. You need to leave now. Chinedu looked at his 3 daughters one last time. Ada, standing tall and fierce. Zainab, cold and calculating. Kayamaka, distant and untouchable. All 3 of them were extraordinary, and none of them were his. He had created them. Yes, his DNA was in their cells, but he hadn't raised them. He hadn't shaped them. He hadn't earned any right to them. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know it's not enough. I know it changes nothing. But I'm so sorry. No one responded. Chinedu walked back to his car, feeling their eyes on his back. As he drove away, he looked in his rear-view mirror. His 3 daughters stood with their mother, the 4 of them forming a united front. The family he destroyed had rebuilt itself without him, and they'd built something stronger, more beautiful, more successful than what he'd thrown away. That night, in Amara's living room, the family gathered. The daughters sat in comfortable silence, processing the encounter. "What are you going to do?" Zainab finally asked Ada. Ada stared at her hands. Surgeon's hands, skilled and steady. "I took an oath. First, do no harm. I save lives. That's who I am." "Even her life?" Kayamika asked. "Especially her life," Ada said quietly. "Not because she deserves it. Not because I forgive her. But because if I let my pain turn me into someone who lets people die when I can save them, then they win. They turn me into something bitter and cruel. And I refuse to let them do that." "So you'll do the surgery?" Amara asked. "I'll do the surgery," Ada confirmed. "But on my terms. Full price. 5 million naira for the surgery, consultation, and post-operative care. No family discount. No special treatment. She's a patient. That's all." "And Uncle Emeka's son?" Zainab asked. "I'll interview him. If he has the skills, I'll hire him at entry level. If he doesn't, he won't get the job. Simple as that." "Ani Ifeoma's daughter?" Kayamika added. "I'll get her an audition with a casting director I trust. What she does with that opportunity is up to her talent." Amara looked at her 3 daughters with immense pride. "You're all handling this with more grace than they deserve." "We're not doing it for them," Ada said firmly. "We're doing it for us. To prove that we're better than the pain they caused. To show that being rejected didn't make us cruel, it made us strong." "But Mama," Zainab's voice cracked slightly. "Why does it still hurt? After everything we've accomplished, why does seeing him still hurt?" Amara pulled all 3 daughters close. "Because he's still your father. And part of you, a little girl part that you've tried to bury, still wishes he'd chosen you. Still wishes he'd fought for you. That's not weakness, my darlings. That's human. But remember this. You don't need his validation. You never did. You are extraordinary not because he acknowledged it, but because you chose to be." They sat there together, for women who'd survived abandonment, poverty, humiliation, and came out the other side not just intact, but triumphant. Tomorrow, Ada would call the hospital and schedule Mama Chinidu's surgery. Tomorrow, Zainab would have her HR department reach out to Tobe about an interview. Tomorrow, Kayamika would text her casting director friend about Ani Ifeoma's daughter. But tonight, they were just a family. A mother and her 3 daughters. The family that chose each other every day. The family that loved without conditions. The family that proved you don't need a father to be complete. You just need people who refuse to give up on you. And somewhere across town, Chinidu Okafor sat alone in his study, staring at photos of daughters who were strangers to him, finally understanding that the greatest tragedy of his life wasn't losing his business, his reputation, or even his fake son. It was losing his daughters, and knowing he'd lost them by choice. "I'm literally crying. Did you see how cold the daughters were? They have every right. Would you be as strong as them? Could you save the woman who destroyed your family?" Drop your answer in the comments. If this chapter gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe. Next chapter is a finale where karma is completely served. Will there be forgiveness? Redemption? You need to see how this ends. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the epic conclusion. The morning of Mama Chinidu's surgery arrived with typical Lagos humidity. Ada woke at 4 a.m., as she always did before major procedures. She went through her routine meditation, prayer, a light breakfast. By the time she arrived at Lagoon Hospital at 6 a.m., she was centered, focused, ready. The Okafor family had scraped together the 5 million naira by selling one of their remaining investment properties. Chinidu had delivered it in cash the day before, his hands shaking as he counted out the bundles in the hospital's billing office. No family discount. No special treatment. Just a transaction between a doctor and a patient's family. Dr. Okafor, the patient is prepped and ready, her surgical assistant informed her. Ada nodded, reviewing the charts one final time. Mama Chinidu's condition was serious. Severe mitral valve stenosis requiring open-heart surgery. The procedure would take between 6 to 8 hours. It was risky, especially given the patient's age and diabetic condition. But Ada had performed this surgery dozens of times. She was one of the best. As she scrubbed in, Ada caught a reflection in the mirror. For a moment, She saw herself as that 8-year-old girl crying as her mother packed their belongings. The girl who'd been told she wasn't good enough because she wasn't a boy. Then she blinked and saw what she really was. Dr. Ada Okafor, one of West Africa's leading cardiothoracic surgeons. A woman who saved lives. A daughter who turned rejection into fuel for excellence. "Let's begin," she said, entering the operating theater. In the waiting room, Chinedu paced like a caged animal. Uncle Emeka sat slumped in a chair, looking years older than his 50 years. Auntie Ifioma clutched a rosary, praying fervently. The same family that had celebrated throwing Amara out was now completely dependent on the daughter they'd rejected. Hours passed. 4, 5, 6. Chinedu checked his phone compulsively. Social media was still having a field day with the Okafor family scandal. New memes appeared daily. Their fall from grace was complete and public. Finally, after 7.5 hours, the doors to the surgical wing opened. Ada emerged, still in her scrubs, removing her surgical cap. Her face was composed, professional. Chinedu rushed forward. "How is she? Is she—" "The surgery was successful," Ada said, her voice neutral. "We replaced a mitral valve and repaired some additional damage we found. She's in recovery now. The next 48 hours are critical, but if she remains stable, her prognosis is good." Relief flooded through Chinedu so intensely his knees nearly buckled. Thank you so much. Can I see her?" "She'll be unconscious for several more hours. When she wakes, she can have visitors, but only one at a time and only for short periods. She needs rest." Ada turned to leave. "Ada, wait." She turned back, one eyebrow raised. "It's Dr. Okafor." "Dr. Okafor." Chinedu corrected himself. Thank you. You didn't have to do this." "You're right. I didn't have to. But I did. Not for you. Not even for her. But because saving lives is who I am, regardless of who those lives belong to. That's the difference between us, Mr. Okafor. I don't choose who deserves to live based on whether they're convenient for me." The words landed like hammer blows. Before Chinedu could respond, Ada walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor. When Mama Chinedu finally woke up 12 hours later, the first face she saw through her medicated haze was Ada's. The young doctor was checking her vital signs, adjusting her monitoring her heart rate with the same professional care she gave all her patients. "You!" Mama Chinedu's voice was weak, barely a whisper. "You're Ada," one of the girls. "I'm Dr. Okafor," Ada corrected gently. "I'm your surgeon. You had a successful mitral valve replacement. You'll need extensive recovery time and significant lifestyle changes, but you'll live." Tears leaked from the old woman's eyes. "After what I did to you, after what I said, you saved me." Ada's expression remained neutral. "I saved a patient. That's my job. I destroyed your family." The words came out broken, heavy with regret. "I took away your father. I threw your mother out while she was pregnant with your sister. I called you worthless. I said terrible, unforgivable things. And you saved my life." "Yes, I did." "Why?" Ada was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Because I'm not you. I don't determine someone's worth based on arbitrary standards. I don't throw people away when they don't meet my expectations. I'm a doctor. I save lives. That's who I choose to be." "Your mother," Mama Chinedu whispered. "Amara, she raised 3 extraordinary women. Everything I said about her, about you girls, I was wrong. So completely wrong." "Yes, you were. Can you ever forgive me?" Ada looked at this frail old woman who had once wielded so much power in her life. The woman whose words had shaped Ada's childhood, whose rejection had fueled Ada's determination to succeed. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn by asking for it," Ada said quietly. "It's something you give for your own peace. Maybe one day I'll forgive you. Maybe I won't. But that's for me to decide on my timeline. What you should focus on is making whatever time you have left count for something better than the cruelty you spent your earlier years spreading." With that, Ada left the room, leaving Mama Chinidu to sit with the weight of her choices. Meanwhile, across town at Paywave headquarters, Zainab sat across from Tobe, Uncle Emeka's son. The 26-year-old man shifted nervously in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "So, Tobe," Zainab said, reviewing his CV on her tablet, "I see you graduated from Covenant University with a degree in computer science. Your grades are adequate. You have some internship experience. Tell me, why do you want to work at Paywave?" Tobe cleared his throat. "Well, because my father said you were hiring and—" "Wrong answer," Zainab interrupted. "Let me be very clear. The fact that your father and my father share DNA means nothing in this office. Paywave got where it is through merit, innovation, and hard work. If you're here thinking family connections will carry you, you can leave right now." Tobe's face reddened. I'm sorry. I just thought—" "You thought wrong. Now, let me ask again. Why do you want to work here?" This time, Tobe took a breath and gave a genuine answer. He talked about his interest in fintech, his ideas for mobile payment security, his desire to learn from one of Africa's fastest-growing tech companies. Zainab listened, assessed, and finally nodded. "Okay, I'll give you a chance. Junior software developer position. Entry-level salary, 450,000 naira monthly. No special treatment. You will work the same hours, meet the same deadlines, and be judged by the same standards as everyone else. If you excel, you'll be promoted on merit. If you don't, you'll be let go. Clear. Crystal clear. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. This is the hardest you'll ever work in your life. Welcome to Paywave." A week later, Kayamika sat in a trendy cafe in Victoria Island across from her friend Demalola, a prominent casting director. Between them sat Adiz, Ani Ifeoma's daughter, a nervous 23-year-old with dreams of Nollywood stardom. "So, Adiz," Damalola began, "Kayamika says you want to be an actress. Tell me about your training." "Well, I haven't exactly had formal training, but I've always loved movies and—" "Stop right there," Kayamika interrupted. "Adiz, let me be honest with you. This industry is brutally competitive. Talent matters, yes, but so does training, dedication, and willingness to start from the bottom. I didn't become successful by skipping steps. But you're my cousin. Can't you just—" "I can just what? Give you a role you haven't earned? Put you in my projects when you have no training? That's not how this works." Damalola nodded. "Kayamika is right. I've seen your audition tape. You have raw potential, but you need serious work. There's an acting school in Surulere, one of the best. 6 months intensive training. If you're serious about this career, that's where you should start." Adiz's face fell. 6 months of school? I thought you could just introduce me to directors. "I am introducing you to a director," Kayamika said, gesturing to Damalola. "And he's telling you what every profession will tell you. Get trained. After 6 months, if you put in the work, come back. I'll personally ensure you get fair auditions. But I won't hand you roles. This is your career. You have to earn it." Adiz left disappointed, but Kayamika felt no guilt. She'd given the girl more than she'd ever received: guidance, a clear path, and a connection to a reputable school. What Adiz did with it was up to her. 6 months passed. Mama Chinidu recovered slowly but steadily. The lifestyle changes were difficult. Strict diet, daily medications, regular exercise. But she was alive, and for the first time in years, she was humbled. She started volunteering at a women's shelter in Surulere, working with single mothers and their children. She spoke openly about her mistakes, about how her obsession with having a grandson had destroyed her son's family. "I thought boys were more valuable than girls," she told a group of young mothers one day. "I thought a male heir was everything. I was so wrong. I destroyed beautiful lives because of ignorance and pride. Don't make my mistakes. All children are blessings, boys or girls." The transformation was genuine, but came 20 years too late to undo the damage she caused. Tobe, surprisingly, thrived at Paywave. The humility of starting at the bottom, combined with genuine talent he'd never been pushed to develop, made him one of the company's rising stars. Within 6 months, Zainab promoted him to mid-level developer. He would never take family for granted again. Adiz completed her acting training and proved to have real talent. Damilola cast her in a supporting role in a new series. She wasn't a star overnight, but she was building a career the right way. She sent Kayamika a heartfelt thank you message. "You taught me that shortcuts don't build careers. Thank you for not giving me what I wanted, but what I needed." Meanwhile, the Okafor family business continued its decline. Despite attempts to restructure, the damage was too extensive. Chinedu eventually declared bankruptcy, and the company was dissolved. The mansion was sold to pay debts. The Okafor family moved to a modest apartment in Acadia, not unlike the one Amara had raised her daughters in. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. One evening, 9 months after the surgery, Amara received an unexpected visitor. Mama Chinedu stood at her gate, looking frail but determined. "I'm not here to ask for anything," the old woman said when Amara opened the gate. "I'm here to say something I should have said 20 years ago. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I destroyed your life because of my pride and ignorance. You were a good wife, a good mother, and I treated you abhorrently." Amara studied the woman who had tormented her. "Why now? Why come here now?" "Because I'm 75 years old. I nearly died, and I realized I might die without ever telling you the truth. You weren't the problem. I was. My son wasn't the problem. I pushed him to make terrible choices. Those beautiful girls you raised, they're extraordinary, and I threw them away like trash. I can't undo that. I can't give you back those years. But I can tell you, you were always enough. They were always enough. I was the one who wasn't enough." Amara felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not yet. You're right. You can't undo it. You can't give me back the nights I stood on that balcony contemplating death. You can't erase my daughter's pain. You can't restore the time Chinedu should have spent being their father. I know, but," Amara continued, "you can live differently going forward. You can be better. Not for me. I don't need anything from you, but for yourself. For whatever time you have left." Mama Chinedu nodded, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Your daughters saved my life. All 3 of them, in different ways. They gave me chances I didn't deserve. They are truly extraordinary women." "Yes," Amara said simply. "They are." After Mama Chinedu left, Amara sat in her beautiful living room and finally allowed herself to cry, not from sadness, but from release. 20 years of carrying pain, anger, and hurt. 20 years of fighting to survive, to prove her worth, to raise daughters who knew their value. She'd done it. They'd done it together. That weekend, Amara was invited to speak at a TEDx event in Lagos. Her book, 3 Roses, A Mother's Journey, had become a bestseller across Africa. Her story had resonated with countless women who'd faced rejection, abandonment, or gender discrimination. On stage, wearing an elegant purple dress, Amara told her story. She didn't hide the pain or soften the truth. She spoke about standing on that balcony, about going hungry so her daughters could eat, about the loneliness of being rejected for something she couldn't control. But she also spoke about resilience, about choosing to live, about teaching her daughters that their worth wasn't determined by anyone's opinion. 20 years ago, she said, her voice steady and strong, I was thrown out of my marriage because I gave birth to daughters instead of sons. My husband's family celebrated when he remarried, and his new wife had a boy. They said I was cursed. They said I was worthless. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Today, those 3 daughters are neurosurgeons saving lives, a tech CEO revolutionizing African fintech, and an award-winning actress inspiring millions. The son they celebrated. She paused again. Turned out not to be their son at all. Karma has a poetic sense of justice. The audience laughed and applauded. But here's what I want you to understand. My daughters didn't become successful to prove their father wrong. They became successful because I taught them their worth wasn't dependent on his opinion. They became successful because they knew they were valuable exactly as they were. Her voice strengthened. To every woman told she's not enough, you are enough. To every daughter told she's less valuable than a son, you are priceless. To every mother raising children alone, you are stronger than you know. Don't wait for validation from people who rejected you. Build your own kingdom. Raise your own queens and kings. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Women in the audience wept. Mothers hugged their daughters. And somewhere in the back, filming on his phone, stood Chinedu. He watched the woman he'd thrown away command a stage, inspire thousands, and tell their story with grace and strength. He watched the audience celebrate her courage. And he understood, finally and completely, what he'd lost. Not just 3 daughters, not just a wife, but the chance to be part of something extraordinary. The chance to build this success together. The chance to be the father these remarkable women deserved. That night, Amara hosted a celebration dinner at her home. All 3 daughters were there, along with close friends who'd supported them through the years. Mama, Ada raised her glass. 20 years ago, you promised us we would be extraordinary. You kept that promise. But more importantly, you showed us how to keep promises to ourselves. Thank you. To Mama, Zainab added, the strongest woman we know, who taught us that being rejected by weak people doesn't make us weak. It reveals our strength. To the woman who gave us life twice. Kayamika finished, once when she gave birth, and again when she chose to live for us instead of giving up. We are who we are because of you. Amara looked at her 3 daughters, her 3 roses, and felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. They'd not just survived, they'd thrived. They'd transformed rejection into fuel, pain into power, and abandonment into independence. Meanwhile, in a small apartment in Acadia, Chinedu sat alone, scrolling through social media posts about Amara's TEDx talk. The comments were brutal toward him. Imagine throwing away this woman. He destroyed his family for a son that wasn't even his. Divine justice. Those daughters are better off without him. They were right. All of them were right. He lost everything chasing something that didn't matter. The business was gone. The mansion was gone. The fake son was a constant reminder of his failure. His mother was alive but humbled. His siblings faced their own consequences. But the worst part, the part that kept him awake at night, he'd lost his daughters. Not to death or distance, but to his own choices. They were alive, thriving, successful, and none of it had anything to do with him. He was a footnote in their success story, a villain in their mother's journey, a cautionary tale about choosing tradition over love, and he deserved all of it. 15 months after the surgery, on a bright Saturday morning, Ada received an invitation to speak at a medical conference in Geneva. As she prepared for the trip, she cleaned out her desk and found an old family photo, taken when she was 5, before everything fell apart. Her father was in the photo, smiling, holding both her and baby Zainab. For a moment, she felt that old ache. The little girl who'd wanted her daddy to choose her. The child who'd wondered if being a boy would have made her more valuable. Then she looked around her office. Diplomas from top universities, awards for surgical excellence, letters from patients whose lives she'd saved. She thought about her sisters, her mother, the family they'd built from nothing. And she realized something profound. Rejection from him had taught her to validate herself. Being thrown away had taught her to know her worth. His absence had taught her that family is who chooses you, not just who shares your DNA. She carefully placed the old photo in a drawer. Not displayed, not destroyed, just archived. Part her history, but not her identity. Then Dr. Ada Okafor, daughter of resilience, product of unconditional love, walked out of her office to board her flight to Geneva, where she would teach the next generation of surgeons how to save lives. Because that's what daughters do. They rise above rejection. They transform pain into purpose. They prove that being unwanted by the wrong people only makes them more precious to the right ones. And 20 years after being thrown away for not being sons, 3 daughters had become the legacy their father lost. Karma hadn't just visited the Okafor family. Karma had moved in permanently. Wow, what a journey. From rejection to absolute triumph. Can you believe how this ended? Those daughters showed more grace than the family deserved. Drop a comment telling us, what was your favorite moment in this story? If this touched your heart, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that being rejected doesn't determine your worth. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion for more powerful stories. And remember, the daughters you reject today may become the queens you need tomorrow. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.